I'd like to now introduce our presenter for tonight, Taylor John from Read the Play. Taylor is a registered nurse and qualified mental health clinician who works clinically in public mental health services. Taylor joined the Read the Play team in 2019 in the role of education coordinator. She is focused on ensuring that the education provided to the community by Read the Play is evidence-based and is in line with clinical recommendations, whilst being fun, engaging and accessible to all. Taylor's career in mental health has been driven by her passion for breaking down stigma and empowering individuals to use their voice to help others. I would like to, before I introduce and throw this over to Taylor, also let everyone know that Taylor has been on Leisure Network's Allen Connect podcast. If you haven't listened to that yet, it's a great listen, and Taylor really breaks down that stigma of mental health and also suicide and just the language that we talk about in that. As I hand over to Taylor, I'd just like to let you know that Jesse Drever, Tim Downs and Brooke Connolly from Leisure Networks will moderate tonight's chat function. We'd love to see some great interaction here, so feel free to ask any questions, look for resources, throw any comments that you would like. But I'd like to now hand over to Taylor John.
Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting that big, wonderful introduction, but yes, I'm Taylor. I work for Read the Play and also work in public mental health as a mental health clinician. I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about mental health 2020 and, getting back into clubs. So just a disclaimer, I'm not very tech savvy. My lovely husband has set me up with 3 screens tonight. I normally work off my laptop. So I will trust the Leisure Network guys to let me know if I'm stuffing up in any way, the way I share things or anything like that. But let me get started and see if we can do this correctly from the start. So gotta click that one, and hopefully. All right, has that shared a PowerPoint?
Looks good.
Beautiful.
Cool. Well, I'm done then. That's the achievement for me tonight. But yeah, so I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about your community club or sporting club, what that looks like in 2020. Obviously, it's been very, very different, and we've got, I guess, different focuses, and we're a bit more concerned about different things like mental health in this year. And obviously, we're coming back into some sort of community sporting space, and I want to sort of talk to you a little bit about some broad ways that you as a club official, volunteer, participant can really make a difference to the space that is at your sporting club and make it as mentally well, mentally safe and as mentally friendly as possible. So, oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's think, how do I switch? There we go. Okay, we'll get there. All right, so to begin with, as Michael did, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting here today. I know that we're online, but I'm currently on Wadawurrung land, and I do want to pay my respects to the local people and thank them for allowing us to gather. I want to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and I think that's particularly, well, it's pertinent any time, but today is the first day of NAIDOC week as well. So I do encourage you to get into the spirit of NAIDOC week. It's very, very important to the Aboriginal people of our land. So today, as I said, I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. I know you've taken time out of your evening to join us here virtually, and I really, really do appreciate that. So I will try to not blab on for too long, which is quite difficult for me, especially about a passionate topic like mental health. But I think Michael spoke a little bit about a local survey that was done in regards to what is concerning sporting clubs and what they're worried about and what they are focusing on at the moment. And I wanted to bring up another one, probably a little bit broader. It's by the AIS. It was a Good Sports Club survey done. And they said that 1/3 of the community sporting clubs who responded were really significantly concerned about the mental and emotional well-being of their members. So if you're here tonight, I want to thank you because you're obviously part of that 1/3, and I hope that I can give you something to take away. So to begin with, I'll have a little chat to you about what Read the Play is, We'll talk about mental health and wellbeing and the impact COVID's had on it. And then we'll sort of talk about some, focus points on how you can support your club to be a mentally well club. So read the play. If you're from a football, netball club in the Geelong region, I'm pretty confident that you probably have heard of Read the Play. We do go out to other sporting clubs. That is definitely our main cohort. So we're a not-for-profit organisation who does mental health literacy education in the community, namely in sports clubs for under 15s and under 17s. So we do have a focus on young people, but everything that we do is definitely applicable to everybody and regardless what age. So we go out to clubs, obviously in non-COVID times, we go out to clubs and we do some really fun games-based interactive presentations during training time. As I said, under 15s and under 17s, talking to them about what mental health is, what mental illness is, trying to break down that stigma and educating them on how to have a conversation with each other and how to seek help if required. We also do a little bit of education for club officials, and that will be expanding in the next year with a few different ideas that we have, and I will bring up a little bit later on as well. But that's Read the Play, and if you haven't heard of us or you haven't had us out to your club before, I do encourage you to get in contact with us. We want to get out to as many different people at as many different organisations as possible and have this very important conversation. So getting straight into it, mental health, mental wellbeing. I suppose to begin with, the World Health Organization has a definition of what mental wellbeing or mental health is. And probably the most important thing about that definition for me is that it's not just about the absence of illness. So it's not just about the absence of lacking a mental illness. It's actually about being in a state of well-being in which an individual can realise their own abilities, they can cope with the normal stresses of life, they can work productively and fruitfully and make a contribution to the community. So what I think is really important, and again, I'm slipping into my little passionate chat, but what I think is really important about that definition is it's not saying that there is an absence of a mental illness. There are many people who live with enduring and chronic mental illnesses that can have mental health or mental well-being and live a really productive, fruitful and enjoyable life. So I do like to talk about the World Health Organization definition to try and break down that idea that having a mental illness means that things aren't good for you or anything like that. So what is mental wellbeing? Well, there's a few different things, and I've got them up on the screen, that are quite protective of someone's mental health and mental wellbeing. And if you have these things, I'm not guaranteeing you that you're not going to struggle, that you're not going to have difficulties, but it's definitely going to make a difference to how you're feeling and your overall well-being in all aspects of your life. So just to quickly run through them, a sense of control. I think 2020 is definitely a year where we may have all realised maybe something that we did not realise was how important having some control over our life and what we decide to do and how we spend our days and everything like that is to us. A lot of people are probably feeling some anxiety that they've never experienced before, some restlessness and everything like that. So having a sense of control over your life, and obviously we don't have control over everything, but having some sense of control about what you get to decide to do for your day, who you interact with, everything like that definitely has positive psychological effects. In context of this year, I mean, we can't cure COVID, we can't make it go away, but I suppose in the lockdowns that we've had, and we're obviously moving out of those, and hopefully we'll continue to step out of those over the next couple of months, but we could definitely control what we did with our time at home and what we chose to focus on in that time. So that's sort of about choosing to focus on what you can control versus what you can't. Sense of belonging, again, I don't need to speak too much about that. If you guys are part of a sporting club, and not only part of a sporting club, but part of the running of it and being a volunteer and everything like that, you appreciate the importance of belonging to a community and feeling part of something and having people that you can spend time with and feel safe with and everything like that. So being part of a sporting club is a huge one for belonging. And again, 2020, we may have noticed that disappear a little bit. The other thing, sense of purpose, sense of self-worth, sense of future, they're pretty self-explanatory, and I'm not going to get too far into them, otherwise I will speak to you for hours. But those things are definitely being found consistently over and over again in studies and research around mental health to really influence how someone feels about themselves and how they feel about their life and how they move forward. The final one, sense of humour, it's so important, and that's why laughing groups and laughing therapy exists, and they're real things. Laughter decreases the stress hormones. It drops a heap of good feel-good chemicals in your brain. It diminishes pain. It's amazing, and I encourage you to laugh as much as you can. My number one tip, well, for myself anyway, to having a good sense of humour is to not take yourself too seriously and be able to laugh at your mistakes and make a little bit of fun of yourself. So moving into 2020, as I've sort of touched on, I think we can all agree that some of the elements of 2020 have been the complete opposites of, I suppose, the pillars of wellbeing that I just spoke about. So we've all felt a loss of control. We've all felt a disconnect from what we previously considered something that we belong to. We've had to shift our purpose and our focus. A lot of people have lost jobs and livelihoods and income, lives, family members, connections, and as a result, have lost a lot of their self-worth. We've had an uncertain future, and obviously, although there have been some, funny memes on Facebook and everything like that, overall it's been quite a serious year. So the impacts of 2020, again, I don't need to speak to this. I don't think you're all here. You're all listening to me tonight, which tells me that you guys are really aware of the impact that all the isolation and all the loneliness and all the stress that has come with 2020 would be having on people. Loneliness and social isolation is prominent health risks for children, young people and elderly, but none of us are immune, and that's why it's so important to get back into these community groups that you all belong to and start making some gains in that space. I think one thing about COVID that I do want to say is it can be pretty easy to say, oh, at least we're all in this together. But we just got to appreciate that everyone deals with stress and everyone deals with experiences differently. And although from the outside or from your perspective or from comparing it to what you've experienced, you may think that someone else is possibly struggling a little bit more than they should be. You've got to realise that everyone has different resilience levels, everyone has different upbringings and different experiences that have been going on in the background. So although the camaraderie and the joint experience of 2020 has some positives, we don't want to be diminishing or dismissing somebody's distress by saying, oh, at least we're all in this together or anything like that. So I do want to just highlight that. I think it's something we can quickly slip into, and it can be really, really invalidating for people. So this slide is here for myself, because as I said, I can get really passionate and start talking, and you've probably noticed I talk really quickly already. I can talk even quicker than I currently am. When I start talking about mental health, mental illness, how to have conversations, how to make yourself and the people around you live their best life and everything like that, I'm going to stop myself and I'm going to direct you to an awesome product that myself and the team at Read the Play have been working on this year. We have developed an online portal for club officials specifically, and for parents around youth mental health, the signs, the symptoms, the sort of core mental illnesses that are common in young people, deliberate self-harm, suicide, how to have a conversation, self-care ideas and tips, and also a huge amount of support and services and a lot of information. So these are free courses. They take about an hour. You can stop, you can come back to it, you can jump to whatever it is you would like to do along the way. I do encourage you to have a look at it because, I mean, if I do say so myself, I think it's a really good resource. And as I said, it is free, and I would encourage you to have a look at that if you're looking at specifically how you can support somebody's mental health. Today, I'm going to talk to you more about broader concepts and broader ideas on how, as a club, you can promote a mentally well and mentally safe environment. Just let me know as well, Leisure Network guys, if there's anything in the chat or you want to stop me or anything like that, because I will just keep yabbering.
All good. All good,
so
Tyler.
yes. So back to this slide, how do we foster these pillars of mental wellbeing in a sporting or community club? As I said, I am a mental health clinician. I work in this area day in and day out. I have previously been a volunteer on a local sporting club. And so I do understand it from both lenses, and I have tried to come up with the next few slides with both those sides of things in mind. So what can we do as sporting clubs? I've come up with 5 key focus points that we can do as a club and as individuals in clubs, obviously, to, you know, break down the stigma, open the conversation, and really make sure that everyone in a space feels safe to have the experiences that not everybody, but very commonly people have. You know, you've all heard it before, the 1 in 4 people will experience a mental, diagnosable mental health difficulty in any 1 year. So I'm going to go through each of these now and just talk about some examples of how you could do these things. And if anyone has any questions, comments, or anything like that, I do encourage you to speak up. All right, so the first one is to raise awareness and encourage help seeking. When we're talking about this, there's a lot of different things you can do. I mean, again, I've said it a couple of times, but the fact that you're here today listening to me kind of gives me the idea that you are trying to learn a little bit more and figure out how you can get the word out a bit more, how you can seek help for yourself and seek help for others. So there's a few things you can do to raise awareness and encourage help seeking in your sporting club. The first one could be interpreted as a shameless plug for Read the Play. It is to get some mental health education into your club. So there's us, obviously. There's Tackle Your Feelings, which is a AFL Players Association collaboration with, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it's Allianz. It's an insurance agency, but they're sort of a similar program to Read the Play, but they are directed at coaches, and it's all about learning how to have a conversation and how to link people with appropriate supports and services. Mental health education is really, really important, and I suppose if I speak from a Read the Play perspective, we recently did an evaluation with Deakin University, so our program was the subject of a study conducted by a School of Psychology PhD student, and I can actually see some names in the participants of player wellbeing officers, as we call it, that I touched base with during that study time. So I thought, just to begin with, I want to show you that even just little Geelong Read the Play, what an influence it can have on people's lives and why it's important to get into sporting clubs. So for example, out of the study that was done on Read the Play, after the Read the Play presentation was done to the under 15s, within the next 2 to 8 weeks, 1 in 11 of those sporting youth sought help from their coach or their player wellbeing officer for mental health difficulties. 1 in 11 is huge. Like if you look at a football team, for example, now I'm going to embarrass myself and not know the exact amount of AFL footballers in a team, but I think there's around the 22 mark on field. I don't know, but that's 2 in every team. If you look at a soccer, this is more my area. If you look at a soccer team, you know, on field, you've got 11. So 1 person in every team, after having the Read the Play intervention, sought help from a sporting, someone that they knew at the sporting club. So I'm not speaking just about Read the Play here. This would be translatable to many, many different other ones. You've got, as I said, you've got Tackle Your Feelings. You've got Are You OK Sport? So everyone knows Are You OK or Are You OK Day. They actually now have a Are You OK Sport initiative. And all sorts of other things. We've got AFL players coming out and speaking about their lived experience, everything like that. And I think it's really, really important to embrace those type of things, especially when they're free or low cost. On top of that, you could do mental health fundraisers. So fundraisers that are both, raising money for your club, but also for a mental health charity, or, raising money for your club, but has the backing of a mental health charity and maybe has a speaker or something like that. Providing resources around your club. I know out at Lara, for example, Lara Football Club, I did speak to Jason, hi, who talked about putting some signs up in the back of the toilet cubicles with just a brief little thing about who their player wellbeing officer was and how to seek help and things like that. So putting those things up around your club, especially in private places like the toilet cubicle, I thought that was a fantastic idea. As I said, Are You OK Sport? Read the play ourselves. I do believe Tackle Your Feelings all have posters and online resources. As I said, if you go to the online portal that we have lots of downloadables that you can put around your club, and then also just spruiking it on your social medias and your web pages and reminding people that there are supports and services out there. Finally, and I think probably most importantly, sharing your story if you feel comfortable. I'm not telling you that you have to share your most vulnerable personal experiences, but if you feel comfortable in sharing that, it is so important, and it means more than anything else. There's a lot of research to actually say that services or support provided by people with lived experience of mental illness are as effective, if not more effective, than services provided by a mental health professional. So when you think about that, sharing your story can make such a big difference to somebody. In fact, again, another study that I read talks about the fact that the concept of feeling not alone from hearing somebody talk was the single most influential factor in someone reaching out and seeking help. So when you think about that, sharing your story, sharing your voice can really change an individual's life, but also the stigma that we're talking about. The more we talk about it, the less taboo it is. And the more we talk about it from a personal perspective, the more real it is, and less, oh, that's something that they experience and not us. So yeah, those are sort of some ideas on how you could raise awareness and encourage help seeking in your club. Further to that.
Hey, Taylor, just quickly.
Yeah.
It'd be great to hear you talk about the difference between around mental health, but people see it as a taboo word or a negative word, and it's actually, there's the importance of good mental health, and you'll probably talk about that throughout, but it's just something I've heard you talk about that I found quite powerful. Yeah.
So I suppose, and that's definitely a good point. People hear mental health and assume negative connotation to it. Mental health is everything. No, let me rephrase that. Everything about you, everything you do in life, everything that you experience, that you put out to the world is influenced by your mental health. And that can be good, it can be bad, it can be everything in between. And as I sort of said before, and why I described the World Health Organization definition of mental well-being is that people kind of have this understanding that mental illness means that someone is broken or that, they're not able to live a fulfilling life or anything like that. There are some people, and I work in public mental health, so I work with the really what you call the pointy end, tertiary mental health services. So I work with people with severe mental illness, diagnoses such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and really severe eating disorders and things like that. These people may live with an illness, a mental illness, for their whole life, but that doesn't mean that they don't have mental well-being, and that doesn't mean that they can't live an amazing life. It's exactly the same as someone having diabetes. Someone can have diabetes. That doesn't affect their ability to live a great life. Mental illness doesn't need to be this big scary thing, and it doesn't mean that you're stuffed or that someone can't do something. It just means that you're struggling and you might need a little bit of extra support to get through. The other thing about mental illness is it's episodic. So if you develop a depression, it doesn't mean you're going to be depressed forever. It might mean that you may have some episodes of depression in your life. That's okay. With the right support, with the right treatment, you're going to develop new and wonderful ways to manage that, and almost guarantee with the right support, every time you have a depressive episode, you're going to get better at dealing with it and managing it and getting through it, and everything like that. So, you know, mental health is not a negative thing. It's actually an incredibly positive thing, and so powerful. If you can take control of your mental health and you can acknowledge the things that make you stressed out, make you anxious, make you feel low, and actively work to accept those things, but also reduce their impact on you, it can really change your life and change your world. And if you share it to other people, maybe change theirs too. So the next point, I suppose, from how to make a mentally well club would be have an open door. So I've got on the slide now talking about having mental health champions, and you might have heard me just speak earlier about player wellbeing officers. Player wellbeing officers in the Geelong region with clubs that are attached to Read the Play, we require them to nominate a player wellbeing officer as a club official. That might be considered a welfare officer or a wellbeing worker or something like that in your club, or you may not have one, and that's okay. What I suggest is that if you don't have one, you work on getting one, and if you do have one, work on getting a team of champions, mental health champions, and that might be people with lived experience. It might be people in the industry. It might just be people with interest in it, or have had experience of family members or friends, or just somebody who puts their hand up for it. The more mental health champions you have, the more identified people who are willing to have these conversations, options people have to reach out, and the more people that are open to say, I am a mental health champion and I support people regardless what's going on for them, the more likely people are to realise that it's not scary and it is okay to feel the way they are. So I think that's really important. And to have a variety, parents, volunteers, officials, player representatives, coaches, captains, whatever your community club has, one of all of them, as many mental health champions, as well as I said, reducing the stigma is so important. Moving on to the next one is modelling and promoting positive behaviour. So, you know, sporting clubs, and I know that we have a variety of different community clubs here tonight, but if I speak just, I'm going to speak in examples from sporting clubs like football, but it's definitely applicable to anyone. Sporting clubs can build a really negative, some negative behaviours and a culture that sort of carries through. And whereas when you're looking at young people, and again, I might be a little bit biased here because I do work at Read the Play, which is a youth mental health service. When you look at young people, especially boys, they actually have a measurable decline in their empathy between the ages of 13 and 16. And this is for multiple reasons, but the main one is the increase in testosterone levels. So from the ages from 13 to 16, a boy's testosterone levels, as we would all be very well aware, increase, but they increase by 14 times the amount. And what that does is it rouses the dominant and the aggressive behaviours of the species, because back in the day, that's what men needed to be. They needed to be the protectors and go out and hunt and things like that. But what that does, those dominant and aggressive sort of traits, is they sort of oppose compassion, tolerance and understanding. The other thing that's going on as well is these social constructs, or these social codes around, you know, acting like a man, being tough, you know, hit before being hit, don't be a sook. Things that don't generally get communicated to young girls get communicated to young boys. And so when you combine that with this physiological testosterone increase, and then these sort of social codes around being a tough guy and you know, bearing it out, and unfortunately sometimes a sporting club can be really somewhere that can be promoted and fostered, we can see some really negative impacts on boys' mental health. That's why we see 75% of people who complete suicide are male. because their empathy and their ability to communicate definitely decreases. The number one, we can't stop someone's testosterone by going up 14 times, and we wouldn't want to, but the number one thing we can do is to model positive behaviour, model empathy, model compassion, and model the importance of being so much more than a tough guy. So that's just something to be thinking about in yourself, and then also the culture of your club around what are you showing these young boys and how to behave. Finally, being as inclusive as possible, and this is another tangent that I could run on if I'm not too careful. Being inclusive of anybody who wants to engage in your club is so important. Now, regardless what their if there's limitations to what they can do practically or physically or even mentally, that doesn't matter. If they want to be involved, let them be involved. Be adaptable, be creative, engage them meaningfully. And when you're doing social activities and things like that, make sure that they are available to anybody and everybody who wants to engage. So that might mean having, morning social events, alcohol-free social events, family social events, not just always having them at the bar. I know that's a good money raiser for sporting clubs, but there are other ways to engage your community and make some money, like the mental health fundraisers that I was talking about before. Next one is to reduce barriers to participation. I sort of just touched on that with the being inclusive. But I suppose what I want to sort of point out, and again, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the choir, but sport participation has been over and over again demonstrated to positively influence people's mood, their self-perception, their life satisfaction, their mental well-being, their self-regulation, pro-social behaviours. So again, like I was talking about with the testosterone, and social connection. So fostering an environment that is about that fun, interactive, the social element of sport, and less about the winning and the competition is really important. Now, I'm an incredibly competitive person, and winning is important to me, but not at the expense of having a good time and also my teammates or something that that maybe winning isn't just as important as it is to me, don't have a good time. We need to focus on, providing awards and acknowledgements for all sorts of achievements that aren't just winning or aren't just, sporting performance or being good at whatever the chosen activity is that you guys do at your club. As I said, it's sort of touching on what I spoke about on the previous slide with the inclusion. And I'm talking more about sporting clubs. I know that there are other community clubs here too tonight. Including everybody and anybody, regardless of their abilities, regardless what they bring to the table. Everyone has a strength, and you can play to it. It may be about, creating roles for people. If they're really good at strategy, identifying them as a team strategist, or, if they're interested in umpiring, if they want to be part of a team but not playing, they could be a runner, for example, or a team manager. There's so many different ways for people to engage in sporting clubs or community clubs, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in that really typical or traditional way of you're a player at a sporting club. So just thinking about that sort of stuff, if there's people that want to be involved but perhaps not involved in that more traditional manner, there are definitely ways that we could make them feel valued and important, and for them to be valued and important. Finally, specifically to COVID, obviously it's applicable at all times, but COVID has shown that we need to have a lot more flexibility. So, if we talk financially, a lot of people have been impacted dramatically by COVID, and people struggle day to day anyway. So thinking about your policies and your flexibility around financial commitments to clubs. If there are families that are struggling, if there's families with multiple children that are involved in multiple fees to have to pay, having maybe some sliding scale fees or payment plans, or in spaces, not sponsorship. Oh yeah, well, sponsorship as well, but that's not what I was going for. Scholarships for kids or for adults even, that perhaps don't have the financial means to engage in the typical way, but definitely deserve to be part of the club. So thinking about how you can support people. I've obviously spoken about flexibility in finances, but there are other things as well, you know, training requirements. Some people really struggle to commit to 2 days a week and the game, for example, and that may be for many reasons. It might be family commitments, but it also might be their mental health. Some people really struggle with social interaction, and although it's important for them, they need a lot of downtime between to recover. And just being aware of those little things, and that there may be more to someone not showing up to training, or maybe more to somebody being less involved, and just thinking a little bit more laterally around what's going on, and just not just cutting them off from the playing field or things like that. How am I going for time? Okay.
Hey, Taylor, just quickly on that. You raise a really good point. I think are you getting feedback from me right now? No, is that all good? No. I think you raise a really good point there around training. I'm thinking about the people in the room right now, people that are at committee levels, coaches, presidents, and those sort of things. And knowing a lot of us are in sport in some degree, I just think about the coaches, and I think we've had a discussion. I think we might have had the discussion offline another time that people at some point throughout a year during training, a kid will stop turning up to training for a week, or he miss out on a game, or he's late to training and all the rest of it. And our culture or our environment straight away goes to they're late, they're not turning up, they're missing out. What's the deal with them? And it goes to straight away performance on what we need.
Yes.
And there was a discussion that we've had about understanding our people at the very start of a year. And things can happen throughout a year, but understanding people at the start of the year, their circumstances, how they're traveling with school, what are their relationships like, those sort of things, how they need to be coached, then allows you during a year, if something does come up, rather than jumping straight down their neck or thinking there's a problem, it gives you that better understanding around that empathy around, I know their family situation, I know their school situation, I know their mental health situation, to then be able to have the conversation well before we're already jumping down their throat for missing out. And as a result of not training for a week, you're not playing this weekend. So I just think that's quite powerful. And I know things can happen throughout a year that change things, but that's just really, that's understanding and knowing your people. And that's the power of probably the committee, but also the coaching teams within clubs.
Yeah. And I mean, this is me probably jumping a little bit into a psychological intervention here, but just for a little bit of context, if someone's struggling mentally, for example, and they've dropped out of training for a couple of nights or for a week, and then they dropped from the team, in psychology, in what I do, we talk about behavioural activation, and that's that vicious cycle. So you miss one, which makes it harder to get to the next one, and then you miss another one, and all of a sudden it's near impossible to take that next step to get back on the field or get back to training. So acknowledging that if someone's skipped a couple of sessions and maybe they're struggling with their mental health, or they're just overall stressed or something like that, cutting them out of the team may actually perpetuate what's going on for them, and make them, if they're already feeling sensitive to being rejected, feeling like they don't belong or don't deserve a place on the team and things like that, being automatically dropped may just perpetuate that, and we might see a complete disengagement. No, what I'm not saying is that we need to, you know, put them in regardless. It's more about having a discussion with them and making sure that there's not more going on, and figuring out a plan on how to get back on the field. Because I know that, especially in community sport, there's often more players than there are positions on the team, places on the team. So it's not just a matter of, oh, well, we'll still put you in because then someone else misses out. But having that conversation, thinking a bit more laterally about why someone has just disappeared is really, really important. And I do encourage, as Michael said before, the L&N Connect podcast. We talk a lot about that and about what you could do earlier in the season around getting to know your players, and understanding what makes them tick and what might lead to disengagement later in the year. And I suppose that leads to this slide as well, in that everyone has different needs, everyone has different strengths, and playing to those. People are going to make mistakes, people are going to make challenges, make errors. and normalizing that and making people not feel like they have to be punished for making a mistake is so important. And I think as club officials, particularly as coaches, acknowledging your own mistakes can make a really big difference to the interpretation of what's going on for players. So obviously we're talking about young people particularly, but this is applicable to everyone. So if you can acknowledge yourself as, oh, I really stuffed up there, I did X, Y, and Z, and I didn't get the result I wanted. But what I have learned from this is that blah, 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 and I'm going to work on that from now on. You're, again, modeling that positive behaviour. You're modeling that it's okay to make mistakes and that you don't need to disappear. You don't need to disengage. You don't need to flake. It's all part of the game, really, or part of being a human. If you're setting goals with people, make sure that they're realistic around their engagement, around being part of the community and everything. I don't know if people have heard of SMART goals, but I always use those because it just gives you a framework. SMART is, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-orientated. As long as your goals tick all those boxes, then we know that, in a nutshell, they're achievable and they're not unrealistic, and people aren't going to feel crap if they aren't able to. If I said that I wanted to run a marathon, that's an unrealistic goal. But if I made it SMART, that went over 2 years probably, and I had very specific steps that I was going to do to get there, maybe it's a little bit more achievable. Knowing myself, it's not, but it could be. The other thing is to encourage self-care and, again, demonstrate that with yourself. So being able to say, oh, I've had a really hard week, been up really late at night, which is not good for me. I know that sleep's important, so I'm going to be scheduling 10 p.m. to start my nighttime routine, or normalizing having a night off training because you've got other priorities. And if you don't go and deal with those priorities, you're going to be overall stressed and it's just going to culminate. Things like that, really fostering a space that people are able to take care of themselves and know that they can do what's important to them and prioritize it. And I suppose, looking at the quote that I've got on the slide, it kind of talks to the Richmond Football Club. Again, something that you, Michael, actually was the one that brought, I think it was you or Tim, brought the attention to it, was that the Richmond Football Club have this sort of new age approach that they focus a lot on mental agility training, mindfulness, ethics training. They share intimate and personal information about each other, and they get to know each other and how each other tick. So that whole before season learning about someone. And they promote fun over fear. And I mean, I'm not saying that doing this sort of mental health focused coaching and development, I'm not saying that has led them to win 3 of the last 4 premierships, but I definitely think it would have influenced it. And I mean, if you look at the Richmond Football Club, you can see that they're a team. And you can see that they have that connection, and I think that there's a lot to say about it. As I said, I don't think that necessarily means they won a premiership because of it, but definitely influenced it. I think this is my last slide because I am aware of the time. So finally, and each one is kind of building on the last. So I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but it's about the overall culture of a club. So as a club official, as presidents and people on the committees, what is your club ethos? What is it that you put out to both your members, but also the world and the greater community? What is the purpose of your club? What do you support? What do you encourage people to come to this club, or are you very I was going to say academic oriented, performance oriented? Build a culture that is around the fact that having mental wellbeing, like the Richmond Football Club, having mental wellbeing can be a catalyst rather than a deterrent for sporting achievement. And that starts right from the top, from the club officials. So building that culture, putting it into your visions and your mission and the strategic plan on how you're going to implement how your club runs, all those things are going to filter down to player level, and that's going to make a really big difference. I think something else COVID has highlighted is the need for great communication, and having communication makes, like good communication makes someone feel like they're part of the community and that they belong and that they're involved. So any information that your members can have, give it to them. You know, make them feel involved in decision-making processes, make them feel like they know what's going on. So even during COVID, I know that there have been some community sporting clubs who have done a really good job of that. Regular updates via email, you know, these chats, Zoom, that's what I'm looking for. Things like that, they make a really big difference. And if we end up, like, fingers crossed we don't, but if we end up back in some form of lockdown, having these opportunities to still be a community is going to be so, so important. Finally, I'm not going to touch on the family focus because I've kind of already spoke about that, and making sure that the community and the social interactions and the social events are family oriented, and that you have supports for families of your community. Really, really important. But I think the final one, and I think that is really good for club officials to think about, is volunteer appreciation. So that being both informally and formally. Do you have awards or acknowledgements for your volunteers and the work they put in? Because we know, I mean, you guys, most of you are probably volunteers. You know how much work and love and effort you put in, and it would be amazing to feel acknowledged and appreciated for that. So does your club have some form of acknowledgement? Do you do, you know, volunteer profiles on your social media? Do you have regular touch, you know, if you're one of the higher up club officials, do you regularly touch base with your coaches or your parents that are there week in, week out doing the time sheets and things like that? You know, really making volunteers a focus, because they're the bread and butter, they're the backbone of a community sporting club, and they're also there because they clearly either maybe identified it themselves or subconsciously, they clearly get a lot out of being part of a community and giving back to a community, and that really impacts their mental health. So acknowledging that can just further improve that for them. So overall, you know, we have had a really rough year, but I want you to think about the positives that have come out of COVID, what you've realised that you didn't really appreciate beforehand. You know, the importance of community. You may have taken for granted being part of a sporting club, and then when it was ripped out away from you, you've realised how much of a hole that has left. So, you know, keeping up with the positives that have come out of COVID. So having more flexibility, different types of communication, different types of social connections, you know, enabling people to be, digitally connected to the sporting club. For people that maybe don't want to be out and about, but want to be involved. And, you know, acknowledging that this time has been really positive to plan for future endeavours and sit back and go, what do we want, and what does this really mean to us, and what does it really matter? What really matters, pardon me. So moving away from the negatives and saying, okay, that happened. What can we control? What can we focus? What can we control? We can control on what we focus on and what we take out of this year that has been. Yeah. So where to now? I'm drawing you straight back to the online portal that I spoke to earlier. If you're wanting to learn more about mental health, mental illness, how to take care of yourself, how to take care of somebody else, how to have a conversation, suicide, self-harm, support services, networks, informal connections, and how to book with us, please head to our online portal, which I've realised doesn't have a URL there. If I jump straight all the way back, I'll get it for you.
That's right, Taylor. I've just chucked it in the chat function again for those in attendance. So that, yeah, if you click on the link in the chat bar, it'll take you straight to it.
Perfect. Training.readtheplay.org.au. But yeah, I think that's all. I think you've listened to my voice for long enough. I welcome any comments, questions, contributions, and I also encourage you to get in contact with me or anyone from the Read the Play team. If you take in the chat function, if you go to that webpage, you'll get my contact details and the rest of the team's contact details. I am open. I want to chat. I want to make a difference. and I want to get out into as many clubs as possible. So please do get in contact and give the e-learning portal a go. But yeah, thank you so much for. I hope you have got something out of it. And yeah, open to any questions, comments, or the rest.
Taylor, what we'll do, just because we're right on 8 o'clock here, and we love to stick to time. So, thank you so much for your presentation. I've just got a little bit of information for everyone still to probably a minute of information. But thanks so much, Taylor, for tonight's session. Obviously, compacted so much content into a short presentation. This has been recorded. It becomes a resource now for you and your club to move forward. We're actually going to load them up probably onto YouTube and then on our Club Help website, which a lot of resources sit. A lot of club Read the Play resources sit in there. We won't go into question time now because of all of that, but everyone's got your details. We've got everyone's details. We'll send some information through. There's been a fair few bits of information come through the chat that we've answered along the way as well. But thank you so much for Read the Play to partner with tonight, Taylor, to give up your time. There's so much information within that head of yours, and we want to get as much intel of that out as possible. But a lot of the stuff that I picked up tonight is around ensuring that our committees are safe, our committees are inclusive and supporting each other. And the only way to support our members, our players, our volunteers is to ensure that our committee are very well supported themselves. They support each other. And they build a strong strategy and a strong culture around the committee table, and it becomes an agenda item on every committee meeting moving forward. Just a bit of information just for everyone else that's still here before you jump off and still get the last 5 minutes of the light outside. Just want to thank everyone for their attendance tonight. I've just said there, recording and links, notes to be sent out. Want to thank you as volunteers for the amazing work you do in your club. And I know we probably lost a few people tonight because of the weather, but for you that have attended tonight, thank you very much. You've made a huge difference. You always do. We want to thank our partners, Sport and Rec Victoria and Vic Health, for their ongoing support. I want to thank our LN staff for supporting. We always love feedback. Please give us feedback, however you choose to do that, through social media when it's promoted, through our chat function, in person, whatever that might be. Reminder for our remaining sessions. So we've got 2 sessions left. The next one is market Monday, the 23rd of November, in a fortnight's time. That one takes us into a deep dive. It's not something that a lot of groups do, but it's around looking at the face of the way you promote yourself. Clubs are doing a lot in social media space, but what are you doing with your website? How does your website operate? How does it work? What does it look like? If I went on your website right now, what's the first thing I would see and what would I think? What is the importance of having an inclusive website that has policy behind it and is a welcoming resource? Because think about it right now. You think about retention of your players. How do you look at recruitment of new people and ensuring that you become that hub that people want to be a part of? They say that recruiting someone takes about 5 times as hard as retention. But when I look at your club, if I'm new to town or I'm looking for sport, what do I see when I look on it? Do I see celebrations of senior players, or do I see family photos, inclusion, key values of your club? So session number 3 will take us a deep dive into websites and social media and how you market your club the best that you can. And that'll be session number 3 in a fortnight's time. But thank you very much for everyone for attending tonight, and we hope you have a great week. Thank you.